Devina Mehra is a market master of the day, founder, chairperson, and managing director at First Global. Devina, great to have you with us here. Thank you very much for your time. Prashant this side. I don't want to talk about microfinance and what stocks, etc. will do, but just use that as an example to ask you whether it does show stress in the system, the consumer stress at the lower end. And how would you read it? What are the implications, not just for MFIs per se, but for the broader ecosystem?
Good morning, Prashant. So you talked about the stress at the kind of bottom end of the market, and that is something which most people have discovered only after the market corrected. But this is something I have been speaking about for many quarters, that there has been a consumption slowdown, and that's not happened just in the last quarter. If you look at the last financial year, 23-24, and you look at just the consumption number out of the GDP, that was the lowest it has been in 21 years. So, that was very much visible. Your GDP was essentially running on the single engine of government expenditure. If you look little broader term, there's this book called Lilliput Land by Rama Bijapurkar, and that showed how for the bottom 60% of the Indians, their real income has fallen from 2016 onwards. That for them, the income minus even routine expenditure, I'm not even talking medical or marriage or anything, is already negative. So if you parse it out into what you see in corporates, once again, if you see entry-level cars, the numbers have actually been dropping. So people have not been going up the income ladder. I sometimes see some talking heads on your TV, or your channel, a few months ago saying, oh, all of my friends are buying luxury homes. They're all buying luxury SUVs. The economy is booming. But people like us are not the only people who are there in the economy. So yes, there's stress. If you talk of credit in particular, I was a speaker at this business summit, and one of the things which was like a light bulb moment for me was when Mr. Kamath said, these two stresses I had talked about separately, I had not put it together, that you think about all the losses in the F&O markets, and those are mostly made by individuals. So I think the figure is something like 1.5 lakh crores or something like that. And Mr. Kamath said, just think about how they have been financed, and almost all of them would have been financed through unsecured credit of this kind. So that's another, direct market related point that goes into credit. And many of the fintechs and all the smaller players have been going down the credit score. The credit score at which banks wouldn't lend is where these guys come in. So there are many stresses in the economy, but they have been there, as I said, for a while.
The thing is that I think the RBI has been quick to tell a lot of the lenders to go a little easy on things like unsecured, etc. Right? They raised the alarm bells a good year in advance almost. I remember when the risk weights went up. So hopefully, I guess that's the hope, Devina, that this is not going to spill over beyond microfinance. Actually, let me ask you that first. Do you think this will be contained? And what are you doing in financials? And let me throw in the whole insurance question as well. We spend the better part of the morning on that debate as well, because it seems that this banca channel, in some format or the other, there will be some regulation on how much of insurance sales can be pushed through banks. So tell us more about financials, both on MFI, stress, whether you think it will be contained or not, and a word on insurance.
So banks, we are underweight as usual, I would say. The only time we were market weight to slightly overweight was 2022, which was the only year in the last 5 years that the bank nifty has outperformed the nifty. Right now, if you just look at pure technically, the banks might do actually a bit better. But these medium to long-term concerns are what give me sleepless nights if I was invested a lot in that sector. As I always say, the problem with the banks and all lenders is that you only get negative surprises. It is not as if the borrowers do very well, they will get some supernormal profits. But if there is a problem, there is a hit. So that is the concern always with banks and lenders. So that's why as somebody was saying that you repeated in every interview of yours that I'm a nervous investor in banks and lenders. Very few times that you are comfortable being there. And a banker was recently telling me, I have not studied that myself, that gold loans have been going up. And he says that's another source of, indicator of stress in the system, because the jewelry is kind of the last thing people mortgage to get money. So and those are things. Insurance, yes, there have been a lot of now changes being announced. We are still studying it. It's not a sector we have a big exposure to, so we didn't need to react immediately. So
no, beyond no, got your point, Devina. Beyond the banks, and you've articulated the concerns over there. Financials elsewhere, and we're saying insurance, you don't have an exposure, but capital markets has been doing really well. People seem to be really gung-ho on the wealth management business as well. Just trying to get the overall picture on financials, even the non-lenders, if there's anything that you've bought in this recent correction or anything that you like.
We haven't bought much. We used to hold a number of capital market related stocks earlier. So the stock exchanges and players in the market and AMCs for that matter. But in our July rebalance, our system stopped liking them. I mean, or rather you can say that liked other things much better. So we actually exited most of them a few months ago.
Hi, Devina. Good morning and good to see you. And let's talk about the consumption theme then. Staples as well as discretionary. You have some allocation, I think 13 to 14% of the total portfolio. Could you tell us, as of now, where is the preference?
So I'll tell you overall which sectors, because this is a very broad level classification. For example, autos go into consumption and so on. So so let me tell you where, in terms of the sectors that you and I understand, where we are overweight. So we would be overweight pharma and healthcare. That would be probably our biggest overweight in terms of just the percentages beyond where the benchmark is. IT, we would be overweight now. Auto components, we continue to be overweight. Where we have added, I'm not sure whether we are overweight or not, in the last couple of rebalances has been chemicals, which after 2022, we were basically mostly out of, and then our systems have started liking them again. And of course, chemicals is a very broad sector, so the winners, the losers, depending on where in the chain you are. But that's one sector where we would have added. FMCG also we have added some. I mean, we had a very low allocation, and we've added in the last two rebalances. But not so much of the very large companies.
Yeah, got that. Devina, the other thing, of course, which you track closely is global markets and global macro, etc. Now, Mr. Trump has put together his economic team. They all seem like they all dislike China. No particular views about India in that sense, which is I guess silver lining and good news. So they all train their guns on China. But for the market here, is it going to be a little tricky? It's a minority view as I remember Christopher Wood of Jefferies saying that Mr. Trump is inherently, he's transactional, and of course he's unpredictable. So we don't know how much of how should one view this from an overall perspective as we head into 25.
So I wrote a whole article yesterday on this, on that only thing you can say for sure with the Trump Sarkar coming in is that uncertainty has gone up because a number of things he said during the election campaign are inherently contradictory. So, for example, he said that the U.S., the average worker the income has not kept pace with the inflation, and there's been loss of purchasing power. Now, if you put a 60% tariff on China, you put tariffs on everything from Mexico and Canada as well. So for good measure, he said that as well. So that means everything on the supermarket shelves, the prices go out through the roof and inflation goes through the roof. So, I mean, you are not even sure. I mean, that's only one contradiction. Defense stocks, for example, went up with his re-election, but he has also said that why should US spend on these overseas wars? So there have been so many things which are at loggerheads with each other. For example, if you really cut government expenditure drastically. Government expenditure is 36-37% of US GDP, so that would be deeply recessionary. He says the US dollar should not be so strong in order for exports to be helped, but a lot of measures he's talking about would actually strengthen the US dollar. And to add uncertainty to the mix, his main advisor is Elon Musk. So if you wanted to compound uncertainty, you have a dream team there. So very difficult to predict even what he will do. Then what he does has an implication on inflation, on what Fed does, on interest rates, and the third order effect is on markets. The fourth order effect is on international markets. Then you have geopolitics, where you don't know what he will do, how the other players would respond. So they're like just infinite combinations if you go into game theory as to what would happen. But I don't think there's a lot of direct things which will impact India. I doubt it, unless he does something which impacts IT services or something, so that may be the only possible risk area which directly impacts India. So the rest of it, we'll have to wait and watch at least what he does before one can predict what will happen. Inflation already is little bit higher in the last print that came 2 days ago. So, that leaves again little less headroom for Fed to cut rates.
Sure. Yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see. Direct impact could be whether we have Teslas on the road here in India, as well as Starlink, whether Mr. Musk manages to use his good friend's influence to open some doors here in India. I think we're in for interesting times on that one as well. Devina, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for joining in, and we look forward to the next call. You have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us this morning.